My name is Gwen Mayes, and I'm a resident of Annapolis, Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C. Today I'm coming to you from Cambridge, Maryland. I have been diagnosed with obstructive hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and in recent years, atrial fibrillation. I was officially diagnosed in 1988 in Washington, D.C., after I'd had a very traumatic and somewhat scary event on the metro system underground, actually. I became very diaphoretic, very panicky, severe palpitations, a lot of PVCs. I was on the floor of the metro. Once I got out onto the street, I took a cab to GW Hospital 3 days later, was speaking with a cardiologist. He asked me three questions. Had I had a family of, or anybody in the family had had a sudden cardiac death? The answer was yes. My maternal grandfather at the age of 49. I'd also been short of breath while I was exercising. And then he simply asked me to stand up, squat down, while listening to my chest, and said, I think you probably have idiopathic hypertrophic subaortic stenosis. And we more commonly refer to it with the new term hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. I remember when I first was diagnosed, I felt really spooky because I remember hearing my mother discuss finding her father deceased of a sudden cardiac death when she was in high school. And so there had always been a lot of anxiety about cardiac disease in my family. I'd passed out often on the playground as a child. So now I felt doomed. I felt isolated. I felt alone. There was no internet. It was a long time ago. And my doctor only had one other patient that had similar symptoms. So I was really scared. I felt isolated. And I remember thinking at the time that I will never have a normal physical, I'll never have a normal lifespan. And that was exactly what he told me. And he advised me not to have children. So I felt very, very sad, very strange, very foreign, as if I could never really relate to anybody or anybody could really relate to me. And at that time, I just felt like I was waiting to die. When I was first diagnosed, most of the time I just relied upon my cardiologist, and I met with him every 6 months. I'd have a Holter monitor that I wore to my gym classes, and I occasionally would have an echocardiogram or an EKG. Very little was known about it at the time. He told me I had idiopathic hypertrophic subaortic stenosis, and there was a new term being floated around, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. But in the around 2005, I started participating in WomenHeart, the National Coalition for Women with Heart Disease, and I went to a leadership and scientific symposium. I also had a medical background myself as a cardiothoracic or intensive respiratory care PA, so I had the advantage of learning from some of my peers and colleagues and friends. But I put all that together and made a self referral to Mayo Clinic in Rochester in 2007, 2008, and really began to diligently track my own heart condition. Other than that, there was very little known publicly. There was very little known as a patient advocacy. But through the years, that certainly changed. And of course, now much more is known about the condition. I have found that just reading the literature, keeping up with the trials, being part of the patient advocacy organizations, talking to my doctors and talking to other patients have really helped me stay on top of my hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. When I was first diagnosed, I was a young woman. I was in my 20s and I was devastated. I was told it was a terminal condition. I was advised not to have children and that I would have a short life expectancy. So certainly I felt abnormal. I found forming romantic relationships nearly impossible. I found that I was distrusting of people. I didn't know who to share the information to. The one person I did at work, they said, you need to go on disability. And this was in the late 1980s. So I really found in the beginning, I did not have anyone to talk to. I felt isolated. I felt that those really couldn't understand. It was sort of like, you don't look like a typical heart patient. And so it's very difficult to find that you have any kind of empathy or that anyone really understands who you are. And I certainly went through those range of emotions. I was in therapy a lot, anti-anxiety medication, antidepressant medication over the years. Over time, I found that I needed to develop my own emotional well being toolbox. So I meditated, started journaling, started having massages, trying to exercise when I could. And I found some trusted friends through WomenHeart that I could share my experience 24/7 with. And that has really helped me emotionally. The impact on my family has been minimal. I never married. I didn't have children. I was really too concerned about the potential of passing it on to my children. I have one brother who's declined being genetically tested. I have the MYBPC3 mutation. My mother had no symptoms, but apparently that is probably where I inherited it. Over time, my partnerships have really varied from I don't want to date an invalid to not coming to an emergency room to really leaving me in circumstances such as in restaurants or bars when I fainted. Currently, though, I'm dating a molecular geneticist who currently understands my heart condition as well, if not better than I do. He's been very, very accepting of my condition and quite supportive. I think I would tell somebody who'd been recently diagnosed with HCM to take a deep breath and slow down and to really respect the fact that it's natural and understandable that they would be in shock or in even denial. It really hurts. It can really be life altering to hear this news, but that the prognosis and that the treatment options are getting better and better every day. We know more about HCM than ever. That treatments include medications, there may be surgery, there may be a device, there are lots of treatment options. And to be encouraged by that. That research and that knowledge is just going to continue to grow and benefit them as they age. Yes, it can be challenging. Pay attention to your emotional well-being, your psychological support, and how you integrate this into your life. But realize that for the most part, the life expectancy of an HCM patient is just as normal as anyone. I think what I wish I had known when I was first diagnosed is that I could live a normal life, that I wasn't some sort of freak, or that I really could function and wouldn't just drop dead ironing my clothes. There was so much fear at the time and there was so much unknown about the condition that the only way I could describe it was people's like, sudden athletes drop dead on the football field, et cetera. And they go, oh, yeah, I've heard of that. And that's how I associated myself. I was simply just sort of waiting to have the next catastrophe happen. And that is a fearful and sort of a small way to live your life. But I wish at the time somebody said, you can have a normal life. I remember I had the same cardiologist for 32 years, and there was a gap in time when I didn't see him. And when I went back, he said, you look just like you always have. He said, your heart sounds the same. And I mustered the courage. I just said, but you never said I could live a normal life. And he seemed shocked by that. And I remember telling him about our first visit together and all the things it said that led me to believe I would not have a normal life and I would not have and that I would have a limited life. But today, I think there is so much advancements being made and that people should be encouraged. But providers should realize that their words do matter. They may say one thing and a patient's going to hear something else. So to keep it all in perspective, there's great hope for HCM patients to get the treatment they need. My tips for managing HCM are first and foremost, develop your own personal toolkit. So for me, that is journaling, meditation, might be taking a walk or watching a favorite movie. It might be talking to a friend on the phone, prayer. What are those things that soothe your soul and that will help you feel like you're just simply more of an interesting person than someone with HCM? There's also going to be days that you just want to call in sick and just honor your body, slow down, and be respectful that your body is telling you that it needs to heal. A lot of days you're going to feel just the opposite, like you could climb a mountain. So it's going to flip-flop back and forth, and be patient with that. Find the best care you can, go to a centers of excellence, and know that those doctors have had experience in managing HCM. Be diligent about keeping your own medical records as well as your medication protocols and your medication standards. And one of the last things I would say is to get involved in patient advocacy. It really helps us all when we raise our voices and tell our stories to others, who may be recently diagnosed, or maybe it's a legislator or a regulator, or somebody who really needs to hear what the real world evidence and the real world experience looks like. So hopefully these are some tips that will help you live and manage HCM better.